Today on 10-Minute IT Jams, we welcome back Dmitriy Ayrapetov, who is the Vice President of Platform Architecture for SonicWall. So this is our fifth IT Jam with SonicWall, and if you've watched our previous IT Jams with them, you'll know they're a global cybersecurity company specializing in firewall, network security, cloud security, and more. So welcome back to the Jam, Dmitry.
Thank you for having me, Nick.
No worries. So today we'll be talking about the new risks that are popping up as a result of sustained flexible working arrangements. So my first question, with this as the new norm for the long haul, what are the exposure points and new risks coming up?
So with long haul, I'm looking at this as like or at least in the US, we're going to be sitting at home probably for another 9 months. But if you look at all the different industry studies and analyst surveys, they're looking at it as a transformational event at this point. Even when we're past COVID-19, et cetera, there are already companies that have announced full remote work or partial remote work. And I think there was a survey, one of the analysts that I was speaking to recently said that in their survey, only 10% of the companies said they're going to go to 100%, pre-COVID-19 type operations. So the new exposure points have really become the endpoints, right? The machines. I can enumerate a long list, but I think if we just go to the top of the list, it's the machines. It's, people are working from home now. We're in a super distributed environment at this point because every company is now a distributed enterprise. Right, so it's the endpoint, it's the credentials, it's with the use of cloud services. I think I might have mentioned it on our previous conversation, but if companies are not using things like multi-factor authentication on their cloud services, effectively the username and password of the least security conscious person in their company becomes the entry into the cloud services, right? People reuse passwords everywhere. So this is one of the reasons why multi-factor authentication is actually absolutely crucial, but also so is the integrity of the machine from which they're accessing, the company resources as well.
Right. Yeah. And you talk about endpoints. So how should organizations go about securing these and re-architecting their massively distributed networks?
So, I mean, of course, it all comes down to budget, right? And within, assuming that people have a reasonable budget, not to completely redo everything, I think the most immediate thing that should be done is enable multi-factor authentication. And this is coming from a vendor that does not sell multi-factor authentication, right? So I'm just telling you as a public service announcement, please enable multi-factor authentication on all your products, not just your cloud services, but even your land-based products. But then it comes down to just the integrity of the machine. So for example, next gen AV. So like I'm working on a PC at home, right? And this is the target, this is the attack surface area right now for the company. Whatever I interact with, whatever websites I interact with, whatever I download on this machine, this is one of the primary attack surfaces. And we know about email, but email security is mostly in the cloud. It's there right now, but I'm not behind a firewall right now. So my endpoint, my machine that I'm using right now needs to effectively be self-defending. Right, and the way to do that is with next gen AV. Not signature-based antivirus, but behavioral, machine learning-based. Looking at behavioral analysis, the heuristics in the machine, and determining whether a piece of software is doing something that might be malicious just based on behavior. It's the ability for an administrator to be able to assess the security posture of my endpoint. So maybe I have a lot of vulnerable, old, outdated software running here. So maybe I shouldn't be given full access to the resources when I connect, versus when the machine is top notch, fully patched, with everything running. And we can zoom out from there, right? This is my machine that I'm sitting at, and I'm sitting at home. So then there is a concept of what's my home network security. And by no means do I advocate that companies take over the security of home networks, right? That's an extremely hairy problem. But nevertheless, you do have to worry about whether it's a corporate laptop that's been given out and it's connected on this network, or whether it's a bring your own PC, type of environment now. You have to ask yourself, well, if this is a bring your own PC, who else in the family am I sharing this with, right? And then, or if this is, even if it's my own PC, right? Who else in my family, what are they doing, and how clean is my network? So anyway, long story short, one of the things that we've seen are more security conscious customers do is basically provide ways to isolate the employees inside of a network, whether it's a separate little firewall, or even if it's an access point, right? The user might actually just, you give them a cloud managed access point that connects, does all the connection on the back end, and the employee, maybe it's an HR or finance or legal departments, they're dealing with very sensitive documents or materials, and they just see corporate Wi-Fi at home, right? And they connect, and then this is as if they're in the office, but nobody else in their environment can connect to this. That's more on the more extra secure scale. Then we come up to just cloud security, cloud application security, as workloads, as people use more and more SaaS services in the cloud. Again, whether it's Dropbox, Box, Teams, O365, etc. That's where the data lives, and that's where the security is going to go. So cloud application security is also kind of having, it's become important. But I would say endpoint security right now is, top of mind. One other thing that I like to advocate whenever I speak to anyone is, please make sure that all of your VPN and whatever your interface with the internet is for your users, right? Please make sure that that's patched, right? The hackers right now are going wild looking for, there's a list of vulnerabilities against the VPN providers, and there's a bunch of people who are not patching their VPN software with whatever their gateways are for their users to get into, right? That is absolutely critical to get that patched.
Right, yeah. And you have a Boundless Cybersecurity campaign coming up. So how does this relate to the talking points around endpoints and that sort of thing?
Well, it's actually funny. We launched the Boundless Cybersecurity campaign almost 9 months ago. We started planning it way before COVID-19 everything hit. And we were thinking of, okay, we will be future looking because the world is hyper distributed. The data is everywhere. Everybody's everywhere. And then 3 months into it, COVID-19 happens. And then we are in that reality now where every company now is a hyper distributed environment. You have 1,000 employee company, congratulations. You now have 1,000 endpoint, 1,000 offices connecting to your network. So a lot of we as a cybersecurity company, we look at covering all the different angles, how a typical, mid-size SMB distributed enterprise company can get hit. Right, and that's there is network, and the actual physical networks have become a little bit less relevant right now because there are fewer people in the office. But network security is still absolutely critical, as a lot of the office workload has shifted into the cloud platforms like AWS, Azure. So anyway, there's network security, there's endpoint security, there's email security, cloud security, remote access, which obviously has been the lifeblood of most companies' ability to operate. But one of the things that we do in our product portfolio is we try to make all of this manageable, right? And manageable at scale. So, for the listeners, like, what does that mean? Those are big words. What does it actually mean? Like, for example, distributed enterprise has been a key vertical for us. And what I mean by distributed enterprise is whether it's retail or hospitality, banking. Imagine you have 100 locations or 1,000 locations. We have to allow a single person to be able to do the same, what they can do for 100 locations, the same amount of effort to do for 1,000 locations. So that's been built into our DNA. So for example, with cloud management, with zero-touch provisioning, with just very, very effective product integration, we allow management of a full, what's called an SD branch, where you take network security, you combine it with wireless, with networking, with SD-WAN. I can provision, Nick, you're sitting at home, I can send you a branch security setup, and I can just ask you to plug it in and not have you do anything else. And without visiting your home, through a cloud management console, I can set it all up, right, and manage it. And so this really enables people to also manage these super distributed networks in a COVID-19 reality. I mean, originally the whole point was for operational efficiency for a distributed enterprise, but right now it's kind of a practicality of not having to visit, or drive or, visit another location. That's a specific example of boundless cybersecurity, but to us, it was the idea that the same security should be everywhere. Just because it's a small location doesn't mean it should have less security than a large location, right? Because from a hacker perspective, it doesn't matter. If I'm in, I'm in, right? If I hack your home, you're at home, and I get into your machine, and you're at home, I'm in the company network, right? So it's, how do you combat that? How do you prevent that? How do you make security pervasive everywhere? How do you make it affordable? How do you make it stay ahead of the threats?
Right. Awesome. Cool. Well, that concludes today's 10-minute IT Jam with SonicWall Vice President of Platform Architecture, Dmitriy Ayrapetov. Thank you so much for coming on again, Dmitry. It's great to have you.
Thank you very much for having me.